Welcome to iCIMS Fireside Chat series. I am your host, Trent Cotton. And in this series, what we like to do is take some of the leading topics today and bring on the SMEs that can answer your questions. Today, I am joined by Rhona Pierce, one of the leading experts in all things candidate experience. And she also helps TA leaders and HR leaders scale their impact through video and content creation. If you follow her work, you know that she is one of the best in class, and we're so excited to have her in the hot seat today as we discuss what's changing with candidate experience. All right, welcome back to the iCIMS Fireside Chat series, and I am joined today by the illustrious Miss Rhona Pierce. Rhona, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So excited because I know this is a topic that you're a little passionate about. But before we dive in, I know you, and if anyone has been on LinkedIn, you're one of the top voices on LinkedIn. So congrats. I know how hard that is to get. But can you just tell the audience a little bit about your background?
So, I am originally from Panama in Central America. I went to school for software engineering, and that's what I did for many, many years. And funny story I always like to tell is I was now at one point in charge of operations for a software company, like regional operations. I was not happy with the recruiting that was happening for us. And I complained to my boss, the CEO, every day if possible. And he one day said, "Oh, fine, now you're in charge of recruiting." I think he was trying to shut me up, but he didn't know. I was like, challenge accepted. And I absolutely loved it. And I haven't looked back since then. And that's how I got into recruiting. I was pushed into it. And I've been doing that for many, many years. Along the way, I started doing a lot of employer branding, personal branding, and always working on talent attraction. And that's what I do now, even with the company that I've started, Workfluencer Media. All we do is employee generated content, employer branding, and all things talent attraction.
And that's why, well, one, I love your story. So just for the audience, when we were in the green room, I said, you're going to have to tell your story because I love it every time you kind of go through it. And we have similar paths. Like both of us got into recruiting and to HR thinking we're going to fix this. And you've made a lot more headway than I have. But, I do think that, your presence and the view that you look at, if someone's listening, they go, I thought we were talking about candidate experience. Why is she talking about employer branding? I think those two are more closely aligned than people actually take the time to look at, right?
Yes, 100%. And I get that all the time where people are like, well, but what does candidate experience or what does talent attraction, what does like my time to hire have to do with employer branding? Oh, wait,
A
it
lot.
has everything to do with it.
Yeah. So why don't we start first with a baseline? How do you define candidate experience?
So, candidate experience is every touch point a person has with your organization from the moment they become aware of you as an employer all the way through when they accept or decline an offer. And honestly, like even beyond that, because how you treat people who don't get the job matters just as much. So,
Mm.
I always talk about candidate experience as like the sum of how people feel about your company as a result of going through your hiring process.
I love that. And it kind of parallels because again, I know you and I love your definition of personal branding is what people are saying whenever you're not in the room. That kind of
Yes.
still applies to the candidate experience too, right?
100,000,000% because people talk. So it's like, did they feel respected in the process? Was the communication
Mm.
clear and timely? Did it reflect the culture that you're selling? Those feelings stick and people talk. And a candidate who had a great experience, even if they weren't hired, can become a brand advocate. And a
Mhm.
candidate who felt ignored or disrespected will become a brand ambassador of yours. They'll tell people all the bad stuff that happened.
It's funny. We actually have a a case study of one of our clients, a very large restaurant company. Everybody would know. Um, and one of the unique things in that case study that they brought out is their view of candidates is they're also customers. And I thought
Yes.
that was such a unique way, and that to me, that's how it should be. And you nailed it. They could be your brand ambassador, or more importantly, they could be customers.
Yes, and people forget this all the time, but it
Yeah.
is absolutely true.
So in that vein, I love consumer behavior, and I love how over the last 20 something, God, it hurts to say that, 20 something years in HR and talent, I've always been amazed and intrigued about looking at consumer buyer and behavior trends and how quickly, they transpire into the talent space. And on average, I've kind of seen like 4 or 5 years, but it looks like over the last several years, there's been a lot more compression in that. How do you think that consumer behavior and psychology is affecting what's defined in candidate experience and expectations?
I mean, candidates are consumers. They spend their days getting next day delivery from Amazon,
Mm,
instant responses from their bank's chat support, like personalized communication from and recommendations from like Netflix and everyone, right? Then they apply for a job and wait 2 weeks to hear anything back. That
yeah.
gap is jarring, right? And it creates an immediate impression about your organization. But it goes even further than process expectations. The way people make buying decisions has completely changed how they evaluate employers. Think about how you research a product before you buy it. You don't just read the brand's website, right? You look for reviews, you watch unboxing videos, you ask people in your network who've used it. Candidates do the exact same thing. They're talking to current and former employees. They're going to Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Instagram, and they're specifically looking for what employees are saying, not what the company is saying, because
Mm,
they know the difference. They can spot a polished corporate message from a mile away. What they
yeah.
trust is really the authentic voice of someone who actually works there, a real person. So just think of the same ways you behave as a consumer, that's the same way candidates are behaving. That's the same expectations that they have.
And I love that you brought up, kind of the research aspect of it. And maybe this is top of mind because right before the call, I was buying something on Amazon, and I was looking at the reviews, but I have found myself actually gravitating to the video reviews,
Mhm.
which is interesting. If we kind of put that lens on what companies are doing, I know you're a huge proponent of video. How do you think that companies should use video in establishing and elevating that candidate experience?
I mean, video is the easiest way to get a stranger to trust you. And what you're
Mhm.
doing, and remember, I said at the beginning, all of candidate experience, every touch point, you're just trying to everything you do is either going to build trust or erode trust. So, yeah, we know people are looking for or employee voices. They want to know what it's really like in there. The absolute easiest way is to get your employees on video. They can see it, they can feel it, and they can suss out because they know half of your employees aren't actors, right? So they
Mhm.
can tell if it's, you can tell, we all have seen those videos that seem like a hostage situation where someone's like
It's
reading a
cringeworthy.
script. Yeah, and saying like, I love working here. And
Yeah.
we can see the other things that we are seeing all day, every day. At least I'm loving companies that are showing. I mean, PwC Switzerland had this whole thing called what did they call it? I think they called it it was something like the unofficial day in the life, or it was like the not to convince you day in the life, and it was just like the unmotivated office tour. That's what it was called,
Funny.
the unmotivated office tour. And it was just showing all the realities of stuff, and it was still showing you like it wasn't a bad light. It wasn't people bashing the company, but it was
Mhm.
people like showing the reality of what happens. Like, oh, I came to work, this isn't this, and
Yeah.
this is what happened.
I love that. And, there's a friend of mine, she is now CHRO for a pretty large company. A couple of years back, we were on a panel and candidate experience came up, and she told the story, because one of the questions, around candidate experience was, "I don't really know that I can trust the employees with video and all that. Like, how do you govern it?" And her response was really interesting. She said, if you trust your employees to tell the story, no one else can tell it like they can. And she gave an example of one hiring manager, and I forgot what platform they use, but they could basically upload a mobile video. And this hiring manager, it was in a warehouse, and he was just doing like a little video tour, and a couple of the employees said, "Hi, I'm such and such. I work on this side." So fast forward, they ended up hiring this person as a result of that video. They were so excited. This person went through their orientation for, I think, like 1 week, and then they come into the warehouse, and he's given the new employee a tour, and the employee was like, "Hey, John. Hey, Amber. Hey, I need to go use the restroom. It's right over here to the left." And the manager just pulled him, and he said, "How do you know all this?" He goes, "I watched the video." And it was, to me, whenever she was telling that story, like, I've always been a huge proponent of giving employees the mic, but something clicked. Like, you mentioned it earlier, candidate experience doesn't stop whenever they say "I do." It actually continues on. And to me, I was like, what an amazing way not to onboard, but to immerse someone. Like, he already felt like he was part of the team because he met these people on video. I love that's one of my favorite candidate experience stories.
Yes, and that's the effect that video has. People feel that they know you already. And you and I do a lot of video, and I'm sure
Hmm.
you've had this when you go to a conference and you meet someone that you've probably interacted with online only, and they truly feel like they know you. And sometimes
Yes.
someone will say something about me, and I'm like, how do they know?
I
Oh,
know,
yeah,
I
I guess I
know.
said that on the podcast or something like that. So yeah, 100% video really, really is what builds that trust. And anytime someone asks me like, how do we control, or like, oh, I'm afraid of letting my employees do stuff, I say, how you treat them is really going to come through. So you don't
Mhm.
have to think about control and guardrails and all. I mean, you do have to think about it to an
Of
extent,
course.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm very big about, and I always give this example. If your employees are treated well, let's say you are at McDonald's, right? They're treated well, they understand the brand, they understand everything. Let's say Burger King, they're not going to get on video and say, I'm loving it,
Right.
because they know those aren't words that we say,
Mhm.
because that's what the other people say.
Right.
And if you treat them well, they'll be happy to tell people. They're already doing it. People who get treated well, they go to a dinner party. What's the first thing here in the United States, love it or not, that people ask? What do you do? Where do you
Right.
work?
Mhm.
People talk about it. How people talk about it, you can tell in a second whether they love the company they work at or they don't. That's the same
Mhm.
thing that happens when they get on social media and say it. So you don't have to worry that much about like, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? Are they going to say something? No, if you treat your employees well, if the employee experience and candidate experience are so tied together, and
Yes.
people try to separate that, and I understand why it's separated, but it shouldn't be.
No, I agree with you. And if I'm a TA leader and I'm listening to this, some of the data and the noise that we're hearing in the market is there's so many candidates coming through. Why in the world would I want to invest any time in candidate experience? I have more candidates than I know what to do with. What's your response to that?
Because you want the right candidates, right? Every single company, I always say there's always some BS at every company. There is.
Mhm.
But the people that work there are okay with it.
Mhm.
Those are the people you want to attract, more people that are okay with it. So whatever it is, whether it's we work 20 hours a day, because that's what we do. Well, there are ways of showcasing that throughout your process that will attract the people that are okay with working 20 hours a day. Is that something I would do? Absolutely not. So I want to
Right.
know. And I won't even waste my time and your time applying to a company that does things that I'm not okay with. So
Mhm.
this is, I think we really need to get away from that obsession with trying to attract everyone. We need to only attract the right people.
Yes, that's a great call out, and I agree 100%. Early, right after I was graduating college, majored in marketing, and so there was this marketing assistant role. It's called a junior marketing something. It was a sexy title, and it was 3 hours away. So they had this really cool thing where you got to do the job for a day, which I did. So I went full suit. You know how I am, full suit, dressed to the nines in June in Alabama, and the marketing position was selling door to door pizza tickets. or coupon books. Nothing again. It was hard work. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree. But had they had a video that said this is what we do, to your point, I wouldn't have applied because that's not what I was looking for, at the time. So it's kind of like that selling the truth. I think is what so many people are afraid of, but that's actually what draws candidates in, right?
Yeah, and it's going to make everything in your process better, right? And I'm not saying like when people hear this, they think I'm saying like air out all your dirty laundry. No, just
Mm-mm.
remember that whatever happens at your company, however the job is, there's hundreds or who knows, even whatever. There's one other person who likes that and is okay with that. You want to
Mhm.
find more of that person. You don't want to be sorting through 10 million people who have made up a story in their head of what it is based on what little information that they have out there. No, you want the
Yeah,
most information, the most accurate information, so that people can self select out. And the people that are like, oh, cool, then that's who you spend your time on.
it makes sense. So it's actually what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's actually a way to keep so many candidates out of the top of the funnel by making sure that you're only bringing in the right ones. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So you work with a lot of different companies, and I mean, you're my go-to person. And I mean, how many times do I text you and go, "What's going on? Are you seeing this?" You're like my little inside to what's going on in the market. What are some of the best companies doing out there?
The best companies have figured out that every single touch point in the hiring process is an opportunity to either build trust or erode it, right? It
Hmm.
starts before a candidate ever applies. They're proactively working on their messaging and storytelling. They're making sure that they're putting it out into the world what accurately reflects who they are as an employer. And a
Okay.
big part of that, as we were talking, is like employee voice. So the best companies aren't just broadcasting corporate messaging, they're empowering their people to share their experiences. Then, when a candidate enters the process, it has to match the story, right? We can't be out here
Mhm.
catfishing people. The
Right.
interview experience, the communication, the people they meet, it all has to align with what drew them in. So the best companies aren't doing any bait and switch. What you see on the outside, what they put out there is the same thing that you experience on the inside, and they're treating candidates like customers throughout the entire process. Fast communication, transparent timelines, personalized outreach, and an application that doesn't make people like want to give
Yeah.
up halfway through. And like
Right.
finally, and this one's kind of underrated, but they close the loop even when with candidates that they don't hire, right?
Hmm.
Timely, thoughtful rejection goes a long way. People always remember how you made them feel and they talk about it. So that's what the best companies are doing.
It's one of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes. Interesting. So, if you were listening to this as a TA leader, let's just say there's a TA leader that's listening and they don't even know where to start. And they're like, Trent and Rona, I would love to do video, but I can't even get to that. What are some things that they could do that is low hanging fruit?
For video or for their entire candidate
Let's just say
experience
videos
process?
off, like video it just kind of terrifies them a little bit. What are some other ways that they can enhance the candidate experience?
So I'll say first thing, start with auditing your communication cadence, right? Like activate your employees, fix your application process. So first, audit your communication cadence. Look at like map out every single point in your hiring process and ask yourself, is there a gap of more than a week where a candidate
Mhm.
hears nothing? If there's a gap, fill it. That's super, super easy with all the tools available out there. It's super easy to like map that out and figure out where the gaps are and fill that. Make sure, even if it's like, hey, no news, but we'll give you more news by X date. That
Right.
makes a massive difference. Everyone can do that. Second, activate your employees. Yeah, video might not be something that you want to do. I run into many TA people who are like, I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. But go find 3 to 5 of the people at your company who are already active on LinkedIn or on social media,
Hmm.
especially if they do video, right? And also they love where they work. Ask them to share something authentic about their experience. Look at what they've already shared. Ask them if you can share it on the from the company page, things like that. It's like you as a TA leader, don't, or as a TA team, don't have to do everything. Actually, candidates don't really want to hear from you. They want to
Hmm.
hear from other people in your
Right.
company. So go in and activate those employees that, but start with the ones who are already doing it. You don't have to go and train people. Trust me, it's 2026. There are already some people in
Yeah.
your company on social media. And third, fix your application process. Like go apply to your own jobs right now and apply to your jobs on your phone because we
Mm,
all do it all on the computer, right? But
yeah.
most people are out here applying to jobs on their phones, on their iPads. Um, count how many clicks it takes you, how many fields you're filling out, how long it takes you. If it's painful for you, imagine what candidates are going through.
Well, and I'm going to tack one thing on to that. Apply to your job on your phone, and then go to Amazon or another retailer and try to buy something and compare that experience, the amount of time, the investment, all the feelings are involved, and that should give you kind of a good baseline. And it's interesting, I love that you call out the application in our frontline hiring report in 2025. It came out in September. 60% of applicants. Now, yes, this is on frontline, but any of us that have spent time in TA, we know whatever happens on the front line is exponential in the knowledge worker space, right? 60% of candidates abandon the conversation or abandon the application process, and the highest rate of citing was because of length. And it was just kind of nice to finally have data that my gut has been telling me that for 20 years. It was
Yeah.
nice to actually see some good cold hard facts. So definitely start with the application. I love your journey map. There's a design thinking. It's called. There's a couple of different versions. I always did the pain, pressure, and pleasure. So this part of the process, is it pleasurable for the person? Is it a pain point or is it a pressure point? And just kind of having that visually, you can really kind of look and go, okay, what's the lowest, quickest lift that we can do? And sometimes, to your point, it is the application.
Yeah, so many times. It sometimes we
It's the
try to
easiest thing.
overcomplicate things. Yeah, like, oh, I need to audit this. And you look at the most complicated things and it's like, start from the basics. I'm sure you'll
Hmm.
find something.
And also, too, as part of your application, speaking of candidate experience, and we've done okay. Actually, I need to send you a swag bag because you're the first guess that we haven't talked AI in 20 minutes that we've been on. So I owe you something next time I see you. But I am going to bring it into the conversation. I do think that at some point in the application process, you need to have a screen or a visual or something that says, here is the candidate journey. Here's where the human is involved. Here's where automation is involved. And here's where AI is involved. And there's a couple of companies that are doing it out there and doing it really, really well. And it's just, once you hit submit, it's thank you for applying, by the way. And it's just a little graphic. And I think that what I'm hearing from candidates is that they apply and they go, and AI immediately rejects me. And I have to do some education to say, I hate to tell you, we've been using DNQ knockouts since we started the online application. So it wasn't AI, it was prescriptive, But I think that if you have something like that visually and they immediately get that thing as soon as they hit submit, they're DNQ'd, then they understand, okay, that wasn't a human, that wasn't AI. I just answered a question wrong.
Yes. And I love that you made the distinction in this graphic of automation and AI because a lot of us in the entire world, I'm talking about humans, are mixing this up now that AI is in the mix. And like you said, we've been doing this for years and years and years. Automation has been around. That's what knockout questions are and all of these things. So yes, I'm a big proponent of like sharing and the transparency behind what the process is. And the more times you share that, because trust me, you can't just share it once right after the
Oh, good
application.
call. Yeah.
People
Yeah.
are not going to remember that. So, okay, after the application, they got that. Great. Then next step, they move to the next step in the process, send it again. And every
Mhm.
time, just a little, this is where, or like I used to go when I was in house, I would send this is where you're at, kind of like,
The
the
little maps.
Domino's pizza thing
Yeah.
that's like telling you where your order is at. Okay, this is where you're at right now. And you just keep showing that over and over and over again and then people are clear. That minimizes the whole I don't know what's happening. what's next? All of that stuff. And also, people can say since the beginning, I don't want to do this. This
Yeah.
is too much. And then you either correct it and fix it, or you decide, okay, we're not aligned in even the process. We will likely not be aligned as employee employer relationship.
No, that's I love that idea. And then just to tack on just a way to kind of measure, I did this at my previous company, and it was very easy. It was just a quick little automation. So we moved a candidate from recruiter interview to recruiter completed. Um, an automated email would go out to the candidate, and it just asked like three questions: Was the recruiter on time? Did they answer your questions, and were they knowledgeable about the role? And then they went through the technical interview. It was three more questions, and it was great because I could track almost by the week of where our candidates were experiencing pain, and I could respond to it very quickly. Now it wasn't an enterprise company. I was working at a smaller company, so I had a little bit more agility. But what was really interesting is we implemented a new AI interviewer that did the technical interview, and a lot of the candidates that we were recruiting, English was a second language. Well, I started noticing, and I had an agent, imagine that, an agent sitting on top of the data layer that would raise its hand and say, "Hey, here's an anomaly." And it raised its hand. It was like, "Hey, you're getting a lot of negative press on this AI interviewer. You might want to go check it out." So whenever I went and I looked, a lot of them were pausing to, and I know you can relate with this, thinking technical and explaining it in a different language. I can imagine that. I can't speak English well, but the AI was interpreting that as they didn't know the answer, and it was
Mhm.
diminishing their score a little bit. Had I not asked, I wouldn't have known. I just would have thought we can't find quality candidates. So if you are looking for some additional low hanging fruit, just put in those little checkpoints. As soon as you move, send them a quick little thing. Ask them, was the manager on time? You would not believe how many times my head exploded whenever I realized that the division that was driving me the most crazy about candidates was the one that was 60% of the time not on time to the interview. And it was so great to bring in the data to show that. So, just a little tidbit, make sure that you can validate what you're doing. So, well, Rona, I've learned a lot. I always do whenever I speak with you. But let's say someone wants to connect and learn more and get all of your wonderful content. How can they connect with you?
So I am mostly on LinkedIn, Rona Barnett Pierce. I'm there almost every day. I also have a newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter right on my LinkedIn as well, or you can go to
Mhm.
ronapierce.com/newsletter. You can see it there. And I have a podcast, the Workfluencer podcast, where I talk to people who are doing amazing things as far as content. So individual creators, companies, anyone who's talking about work in their content, anyone who's a workfluencer, that's who I feature every week on the show.
Well, it is one of my go-tos as well because I just like the storytelling that's in it, and it's a great way to, if you're listening, you're like, I don't have time, I don't want to hear all of that. Trust me, you do, because the way that Rona interviews, she pulls a story out of someone, and I always walk away with like, I wish I would have known that whenever I was still a practitioner. So, Rona, thank you for cutting some time out of your busy, busy schedule and joining us for iCIMS Fireside Chats.
Thank you for having me.